The snow began early that year, tumbling softly from a sky the color of pearl. Through the frosted window of their small apartment, Amelia watched the flakes drift down like tiny promises, each one melting before it could touch the ground. Inside, warmth glowed from the Christmas lights that her daughter, Leela, had carefully strung around the room. The air smelled faintly of cocoa and the cinnamon candle they burned every December. It should have felt like Christmas. But something in Amelia's chest sat heavy, a quiet unease that refused to leave. Her phone buzzed. She smiled at first, expecting the annual family message, her mother's overly formal invitation to Christmas dinner, the same one she'd received every year since she was old enough to read. She opened it with a small burst of hope, but as her eyes moved down the screen, her breath caught. "Amelia, of course you're welcome to dinner this year, but please don't bring Leela. It's just, things are a bit tense after last time. She makes the other kids uncomfortable. I'm sure you understand." Amelia read the words again, each one colder than the snow outside. Her mother, Margaret, always had a way of making cruelty sound like etiquette. She sat in silence for a long minute before the phone slipped from her fingers onto the table. Mom, who texted, Leela called from the couch, where she was cutting snowflakes from white paper. "Just Grandma," Amelia replied softly, forcing a smile. "She's planning Christmas dinner." Leela's eyes brightened. "Can I help bake the cookies this year? Uncle Ryan always eats too many." Amelia's throat tightened. "Maybe," she whispered. That night, after Leela went to bed, Amelia called her mother. "What do you mean Leela isn't welcome?" she asked, trying to keep her voice even. Margaret sighed. "Oh, darling, it's nothing personal. It's just that Sophie said Leela made her boys uncomfortable last year. She's quiet. She doesn't join in. It brings down the mood." "She's 12, Amelia said sharply. "She's shy." "I know," Margaret replied, her tone clipped. "But Christmas should be cheerful. Maybe it's best if she sits this one out. You understand, don't you?" Amelia didn't, but she didn't argue either. Years of trying to win her mother's approval had taught her the futility of fighting. After hanging up, she sat in the dim kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the muffled sound of carols from next door. In her heart, a line had been crossed, one she didn't yet know how to erase. When morning came, she pasted on a smile as she poured Layla's cereal. "Grandma's dinner might be small this year," she said lightly. "Maybe it's just for adults." Leela nodded slowly, the corners of her lips turning down for just a second before she masked it with a grin. "That's okay, Mom. We can make our own Christmas here." Amelia looked at her daughter's hopeful face and felt something inside her crack. That small apartment, once filled with warmth, suddenly felt too quiet, too still, the silence echoing louder than any words her mother had spoken. Outside, the snow kept falling, soft and endless, covering everything, even the hurt, in a fragile, temporary beauty. The days leading up to Christmas passed in a blur of forced cheer. Amelia baked cookies, wrapped small gifts, and tried to hum along to carols on the radio, but her heart wasn't in it. Every time she looked at her daughter's bright, trusting eyes, guilt pricked sharper than any winter wind. Leela didn't mention the family dinner again, though Amelia knew she hadn't forgotten. She was too wise for 12, gentle, observant, the kind of child who reads silence better than words. On Christmas Eve morning, snowflakes drifted down again, settling like lace on the window panes. Leila sat cross-legged on the floor, painting a tiny ornament she'd made from a walnut shell. "It's for Grandma," she said quietly. "Even if she doesn't want me there, she should still have something nice." Amelia's heart twisted. "Sweetheart, you don't have to." "I know," Leila interrupted softly, "but I want to." That evening, Amelia stood before the mirror, adjusting her coat. She hated herself for even considering going. Leila insisted. "You should be with them, Mom," she said. "I'll be fine. I'll watch a movie and wait for you." Amelia knelt in front of her daughter. "You sure?" Leila smiled. "I'm sure. Bring me some pie, okay?" It was snowing harder when Amelia reached her parents' house, a big, warm place glowing with golden light and laughter. As she stepped inside, the smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon filled the air. Her brother Ryan hugged her cheerfully. Sophie flashed her polished smile, all teeth and no warmth. "There you are," Margaret exclaimed, bustling out of the kitchen. "We were beginning to think you weren't coming." Amelia forced a smile. Traffic, dinner went as it always did, loud, bright, and empty. The clatter of cutlery, the polite laughter, the same stories told for the 100th time. Only this year, every sound felt like an echo of something broken. Sophie talked endlessly about her son's achievements, pointedly ignoring Amelia. Ryan told jokes that no one really laughed at. Margaret kept glancing at her, perhaps searching for a crack, a sign of rebellion. But Amelia said nothing. Halfway through dinner, she excused herself. "I should get back," she murmured. "Leela's waiting." Her mother frowned. "Oh, stay a bit longer. She'll be fine." Amelia's voice came out sharper than she meant. "She's a child, and she's alone on Christmas." The room fell silent for a beat. No one argued, but no one asked her to stay again either. When she stepped outside, the night air hit her like truth, cold, biting, and clear. Snow blanketed the streets, muffling every sound. Her boots crunched softly as she hurried home. Inside the apartment, the lights were still on. The little tree twinkled softly, and Leela lay curled on the couch, asleep under a blanket. A half-finished cup of cocoa sat beside her, its surface gone cold. On the table was a small paper note in Leela's uneven handwriting. "Merry Christmas, Mom. Don't feel bad. I love you." Amelia's throat burned as she sank to her knees beside her daughter, brushing a stray curl from her forehead. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, voice trembling. Leela stirred, half awake. "Did you have fun, Mom?" Amelia swallowed hard. "And not without you." Outside, the snow kept falling, quiet and endless, as if the whole world was holding its breath, mourning with her in that tiny, empty house. The following Christmas came quietly, without invitation or expectation. For the first time in her life, Amelia didn't wait for her phone to buzz with her mother's message. She and Leela decorated their little tree with handmade ornaments, each one imperfect and beautiful. The apartment was still small, but it felt different now, lighter, warmer, freer. Instead of driving to her parents' house, Amelia and Leela spent Christmas Eve baking cookies for the shelter down the street. They carried the trays through the snow, their breath turning to mist, their laughter echoing softly against the buildings. The volunteers welcomed them with open arms. No one cared about appearances, or awkward silences, or the right kind of cheer. It was messy, kind, and real, the way love was supposed to be. Amelia realized something that night: family isn't always blood. Sometimes, it's the people who see your heart without judgment. As the years passed, Amelia stopped answering her mother's cold, polite texts. She built a life centered around kindness, not obligation. Her daughter, once shy and uncertain, blossomed like spring after a long winter. Leela found her passion in art. She painted their life in colors brighter than reality. Skies streaked with gold, houses glowing against snow, faces lit by warmth instead of pain. She joined community projects, taught art to children who couldn't afford supplies, and began to dream of making a difference. Every time Amelia watched her daughter's hands move across a canvas, she saw the strength that had carried them through that empty Christmas. When Leela turned 17, the family tried to reach out again. Margaret had fallen ill, and Ryan called one night, his voice full of guilt. "She's asking for you," he said. "She wants to make things right." Amelia hesitated. Forgiveness had been growing inside her, not as an obligation, but as a release. She wasn't angry anymore, just tired. She visited the hospital a week later. The room smelled of disinfectant and wilted flowers. Margaret looked smaller than Amelia remembered. Her once commanding presence faded to a whisper. When their eyes met, there was no trace of authority, only regret. "I was wrong," Margaret said quietly. "I listened to others when I should have protected my own. I don't expect you to forgive me." Amelia didn't answer right away. She simply nodded, her heart strangely calm. "You hurt Leela more than you hurt me," she said, "but I'm glad you said that." Later, when she told Leela about the visit, her daughter shook her head gently. "I don't hate them," she said. "I just don't want to go back. Some people lose you when they stop seeing your worth." Those words settled deep inside Amelia. For years she had tried to prove she belonged in a family that never truly accepted her. Now she finally understood they had lost her long before that Christmas. That winter, as snow fell once again outside their window, Amelia and Leela sat side by side painting together. The radio hummed softly in the background, and the air smelled of cocoa and pine. For the first time in a long while, Amelia didn't feel broken or unwanted. She felt whole. They didn't need an invitation anymore. They had built a home where love was always welcome. Years drifted by like pages turning in a quiet book. Amelia grew older, her hair silvering at the edges, while Leela bloomed into everything her mother had dreamed. She'd become confident, kind, radiant. The pain of that long ago Christmas no longer burned like an open wound. It had settled into something softer, a scar that no longer hurt to touch. By 24, Leela had made a name for herself in the city. Her paintings, rich, emotional, and full of light, were displayed in galleries across the country. Critics spoke of a soul who paints hope out of heartbreak. She never told them the full story, but pieces of it hid in every brushstroke: the quiet house, the forgotten child, the little tree glowing in the dark. That December, she hosted a charity exhibition called The House with One Light On. The proceeds would go to children without families, those who spent holidays in shelters or foster care. Amelia helped her set up the hall, stringing soft lights and arranging wreaths of white roses. The air smelled faintly of pine and snow, and everything shimmered with a peace that came from love, not perfection. When reporters asked what inspired the title, Leela smiled gently. One Christmas, I waited in an empty house while my family celebrated without me. I remember sitting by the window, watching the snow, thinking how every home had lights except ours. That night, I promised myself I'd become the light for someone else. The story spread like wildfire. News outlets shared her words, and soon people from all over the country sent letters, thanking her for giving voice to their own silent pain. Donations poured in. The exhibition raised more money than she'd dared to hope. On the night of the event, the crowd was thick with admirers, journalists, and old faces from her past, including Margaret, her grandmother, and Sophie, who hovered awkwardly near the entrance. Unsure if they belonged, Amelia saw them before Leela did. For a moment her breath caught. Time had worn them down. Their arrogance was gone, replaced by quiet regret. When Margaret finally approached Leela, her eyes filled with tears. "You're remarkable," she whispered. "I don't deserve to say this, but I am so sorry. I thought I was protecting our family's image. I didn't see the harm I was doing." Leela's expression softened. She didn't step back, but she didn't step forward either. "I forgave you a long time ago," she said gently. "But forgiveness doesn't mean I can go back to who I was then. That little girl needed you, and you weren't there. Now I just want to make sure no one else has to feel that kind of loneliness." Tears spilled down Margaret's face, but Leela didn't let bitterness touch her words. She smiled, not out of pity, but out of peace. When the night ended, Amelia and Leela stood together under the snow outside the hall. City lights sparkled against the white streets, and laughter from the event drifted into the cold night air. "They see you now," Amelia said softly. "The world does." Leela slipped her arm around her mother. "That's all I ever wanted, not for them to see me, but to see that love always wins." Amelia nodded, her heart full. They walked home through the falling snow, leaving footprints side by side, no longer two forgotten souls, but two women who had turned their pain into something shining. The sweetest revenge wasn't cruelty, or distance, or fame. It was peace and the unshakable knowledge that they had built a life full of light, where no one would ever again be left out in the cold.